As Congress adjourns for 100 days amid the election season, the draft Bangsamoro Basic Law is now in limbo. To no avail, President Aquino used his final sauna last July in convincing both legislative chambers to pass the BBL.
May ilang mga batas na nais kong ilapit upang sana'y maipasa sa loob ng kasalukuyang Kongreso. Pangunahin siyempre po dito ang Bangsamoro Basic Law,
which embodies the peace deal signed by the Philippine government and the MILF. Good evening. I'm Tony Abad, and this is Political Capital. Our guests tonight, Professor Miriam Coronel Ferrer, Chair of the Philippine Government's Peace Panel, and Attorney Benedicto Bacani, Executive Director of the Institute for Autonomy and Governance. Good evening.
Good evening, Tony.
And thank you for joining us. The BBL could have been the Aquino administration's biggest legacy. But realistically, is there still a chance for it in the 16th Congress?
Realistically, the chances are rather very slim.
Was there talk or has there been a possibility raised by the President of calling Congress to a special session over this recess?
The problem is that what appears to be the process now is that the Senate is just waiting for the House to remand their version to the Senate, and until such time, the Senate won't be able to move. So calling for a special sessions at this point without that kind of clarity, well, if the House is able to do it, maybe it would make sense to call for special session so that the Senate can pick up. Post-elections, both houses, they'll be busy canvassing the votes, but so it becomes even more difficult afterwards.
Let me raise the issue of the Mama Sapano incident. If it didn't happen, do you think it would have been smooth sailing for the BBL's passage?
As far as we're concerned, there was enough time. If only that kind of effort was put into this, the cooperation of our legislators and, that kind of responsibility to get their stand known and through the proper venue, which is inside the House.
I guess there was some doomsaying, the threat of not having a BBL. Looks like the BBL is not going to pass. Does this mean war for Mindanao, or is it derailing?
Well, I don't think anybody wants war to break out. So we are doing everything, and we're very happy that the MILF has said that they will continue this track, the peace track, and we'll try to get everybody still in line. But as you know, there are groups that that just might see this as an opportunity to rally followers to more violent and extreme causes.
Attorney Bacani, you know the law. I mean, you've studied it. What do you think about it?
The BBL, or the Comprehensive Agreement of the Bangsamoro, because the original BBL that was submitted by the Office of the President to Congress was actually the implementing law of the Comprehensive Agreement of the Bangsamoro.
Okay.
It is, from the studies that we've made, because we've studied the autonomous region and Muslim Mindanao, we think that it's a good roadmap. The CAB is a good roadmap. And really the proposed BBL embodies structural changes that have to be made, especially the relations between the national government and the regional autonomous government. So that is the fundamental problem why ARM is not really functioning as envisioned, to be an effective autonomous government. But it's really the question now of, you asked about Mama Sapano. I think there's a need to go into a lot of details, and really study the contents of the law. And so the issue of constitutionality came out very strongly, in the deliberations in Congress. For me, it's good moving forward that we should have this real dialogue now on the BBL, because there are provisions, I think, in the CAB. The CAB is a set of aspirations, it's a roadmap. But when you try to put that into public policy, then you need to get into the whole, real politics, the whole setup, political, constitutional setup. And therefore, moving forward, I think it's important to have that real dialogue now on what we can, now implement in the COB, okay, so this Bangsamoro Basic Law now or in the future. And to really, at the end of the day, you need to have a workable autonomy.
Okay.
And when you were talking about the legacy of the Aquino administration,
Yes.
I think the greatest legacy, not BBL. No? BBL is just part of it, no? But the whole peace process, how we really move this forward under this administration. But the problem is our political system, is strong enough, to accommodate this now, right?
Okay.
Or do we need some policy
the
reforms?
BBL or the COB?
The COB, the
COB,
COB, yeah.
okay.
Because I always make a distinction between the COB and the BBL.
BBL,
No, the
okay.
COB, for me, is a set of aspirations and roadmap. This is how we will resolve it, and it cannot be, implemented. For me, it cannot be implemented, in just one law, right?
Yes.
Okay, you need some really political reforms, some change of mindsets also. Okay, good devolution. You need resources also, and these are the things that we need to discuss in crafting the law.
Okay.
Okay, and I think we've been too hasty also, trying to push that law and pass that law. So for me, even before Mama Sapano, it's not a question of people accepted the BBL. It's just that they were indifferent to it. Okay, they were indifferent to it, And then when the Mama Sapano happened, that's when they started looking, and saying, oh my God. And so, of course, the biases are there.
Yes.
So they interpreted all these powers already to be a step, to independence.
When we come back, a different view from a member of the House of Representatives. Stay with us. You're back on Political Capital, and joining us now is ACT CIS Party List Representative Samuel Pagdilao Jr. Good evening, Congressman Pagdilao.
Good evening.
Thank you for joining us today. You were a founder of the PNP SAF unit.
One of the founding
One of the
members,
founders.
yes.
The Mama Sapano incident, did that doom or otherwise affect the passage of the BBL?
Yeah, obviously it affected. No? Well, I'm not prepared to say that it was the cause of the doom, the final blow to the BBL, but it really did a lot, in ensuring that, of course, not only the legislators but also the Filipino people sort of seriously reviewing or going over or evaluating the BBL itself.
Certain senators have actually, say that even up to now in its present form, it's still unconstitutional.
I have the same opinion or position with some of our colleagues in the Senate. Although the ad hoc committee had stated that they have already cleared the original BBL of unconstitutional provisions, but to me, as I have gone over it, there are still provisions that I believe are unconstitutional. One of these, of course, is the form of government. Yeah, because according to our Constitution, as it provided for a presidential form, the BBL provides for a parliamentary form of government for the Bangsamoro political entity. Of course, the proponents also cites provision of the Constitution as a basis for a different form of government for the Bangsamoro political entity. So in that case, that would surely land the BBL before the Supreme Court for its final arbitration or decision.
Okay. What would it take for you and your colleagues to support the BBL if ever returned to the Congress?
For me personally, I have actually adopted as my own personal convention for test. For me to decide on the BBL first, the constitutionality test.
Okay.
As you well know, all laws coming from Congress must conform to the Constitution as the fundamental law of the land. Second, it must be inclusive in the sense that all stakeholders must be involved in this. They must not only be beneficiary of the provisions of the law itself, but in the crafting of these agreements, they should be part and they should own, because it's the only way that we can ensure that they will, respect and follow whatever the resulting form of the BBL will be. And then third, the effectivity of the provisions, because the reason for the BBL is to ensure that peace will reign supreme in Mindanao, and not only peace, but there will also be progress. So we have to ensure that the provisions will ensure that, no?
Yes.
Bring peace and bring progress. And then, of course, lastly, the sincerity of the parties to the agreement. You know, we may have a perfect law, but you know, deep in the hearts of these parties, they are not going to respect it. So, what good is a law? No?
Would you trust the MILF, one of the parties, with this peace agreement?
That should be shown by the MILF.
Okay.
So, especially during trying circumstances or trying times, you know, and one of these, I might say, is the Mama Sapano incident.
Yes.
So you can see if the parties to this agreement are sincere.
Right.
And there were tests actually, you know, there were causes for them to be able to show that they can be trusted. Okay? After the Mama Sapano, there were calls for them to surrender the firearms, the personal property, as well as government property taken by MILF who were involved in the Mama Sapano incident. Are we satisfied by what they have done in compliance, no, with the call for them to do that? Then secondly, there were also calls for them to surrender the terrorists that were actually being coddled, no, according to some quarters, being coddled by MILF. So have they done concrete steps or actions to show that they are really out there to help? No, because there is a provision in the agreement or ceasefire agreement that they're going to help in flushing out criminals, including terrorists, no, who are within their area, no, of control. So have you seen them doing that? And then third, no, this is another opportunity for them to really show their sincerity. If and when the warrants of arrest will come out, will issue against those members of MILF who were involved in the Mama Sapano, are they going to help government bring before the bar of justice those involved? So if they do, then they will satisfy the test of sincerity.
Now, sir, you're from Mindanao. Now that it looks like we won't be having a BBL, at least within this particular Congress, do you think will lead to conflict?
Well, I hope not. No? If you will listen to the MLF leaders, they don't want to go back to status quo ante, no? The situation before the BBL. No? So I think we have to hold them on that assurance, no? And that is the right way to do. No? We have to pursue peace through peace talks.
Yes.
So with this assurance, I think what we need to do is ensure that in the meantime, even if this BBL has no more chance, no, of passing during this 16th Congress, the government, the present government, must ensure that first the ceasefire agreement stays. Okay. Second, that pursue talking, especially to the MILF, and make sure that the incoming administration or the new government will pursue the same avenue by, of course, asking all these presidentiables. We don't know who is going to win. Time had run out, but it doesn't mean that it is the end of it.
After the break, pro-BBL advocates will discuss possible solutions to break the impasse. Stay tuned. You're still with Political Capital and our guests, Chief Peace Negotiator Miriam Ferrer with Institute for Autonomy and Governance Head Ben Bacani, who came all the way from Cotabato City. Professor Ferrer, Well, why do you think the BBL was actually being pushed by the governments of, correct me if I'm wrong, the United States, Japan, and Malaysia? What
And
was
the
in
rest
it
of
for
the
them?
international community, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, the European Union, they have all been very supportive of this process because, first of all, of course, from the security perspective, they know what's going on in the rest of the world and the kinds of challenges that different countries are facing with the rising threat of extremist ideologies, Islamist ideologies. So they know that if we are able to solve this problem by drawing in that kind of a segment of the Islamic population in our country to this peaceful track, and through actual reforms that they will experience in their lives, that we are actually contributing to world peace. And that may sound a little bit, corny to talk about world peace, but the situation in the world today is really bad. And any initiative in any part of the world that provides a good environment for the flourishing of a more inclusive society, then certainly that's very important to the whole world.
What kind of peace formula do you think would be acceptable? No? I mean, given that this attempt at the BBL has failed, would be acceptable to both Congress and MILF, and what kind of changes do you think need to be put in to improve the chances in, let's say, a next round of peace talks?
The main objective of the BBL is to evolve a working, effective, autonomous governance in the region. And through this effective, responsive, autonomous governance, then you will have real development, good law enforcement.
Yes.
And that's where that can be the foundation for sustainable peace and development. So that's why when people say BBL is equal to peace, then we have to, you have to look at all the details of this,
Yes.
And this is what Congress is supposed to be doing, in consultation with stakeholders, and really look at whether this will really bring about good governance, in the region. So I think what needs to be done is continue that dialogue with Congress. So even the MILF before was saying that, they're not opposing changes in the proposed BBL, So as long as you will come up with a good BBL, but the problem is we had so many labels, right?
Yes.
Good, bad BBL, but we never really discussed that at the level of what are the capacities that are out there, what are the resources that are out there. So why is it that you have 4% of this and this much? But the needs are huge also. No? So I think there's an opportunity here with the non-passage of the BBL, to discuss this, in an environment, okay, which is less politicized maybe and less emotional, and really go down to the level of really talking about what this means to communities in the Bangsamoro.
Okay. I found it unusual that you were proposing to put into place a parliamentary system within a larger context of a presidential
That's
system. Personally, I think it's actually a more superior system, and maybe is that one question is maybe that is supposed to help in better governance in the future. On the other hand, having such an unusual political unit within the national context might actually lead to the dangers of it eventually separating or breaking away. But, only because you've set up such a completely different system.
But the very reason why the Constitution said that you will have two autonomous regions precisely provides that kind of an opportunity to have a different kind of arrangement, form of government, as defined by Congress in this region. Even the local governments who decided that the local governments would look like this. Aside from the very general provisions that you find in the Constitution, it was Congress who decided that we will have the same kind of local government that we had in the past before martial law. But it could have been some other thing, except that probably we were short of imagination on how better local governments can actually arrive at.
Speaking of imagination, why not just, let me throw it out there. Why not we just shift to a federal system of government and a parliamentary system so that you have chief ministers, you know, then you give you address the aspirations of everybody.
Well, that's
wasn't
true.
that put on the table?
No, well, constitutional reform requires a whole different set of, mobilization. But if that's the inclination of the next administration, or if there's enough momentum to be able to generate that, then I suppose a lot more people will come on board. Because some of the problems that we've encountered here is not so much constitutionality issues, it's about what people think the Bangsamoro deserve, what they feel we should give them, the rest of the Filipinos should give them. But if it's for everybody else, I'm sure you'll have that kind of more openness and generosity as well.
What would be your recommendation or advice to the next chair or the next panel in dealing with this issue?
They will have to study everything that's in place. Not so many people know about the kinds of mechanisms that we've already put there.
Yes.
These are very functional mechanisms. They serve specific purposes: economic, security, social objectives that will lead to healing and reconciliation. And they will need to study the history of the conflict, because if you don't really know the history, both of the conflict and the peace process, the long history of negotiations, then you might be assuming that, you can just go anywhere on this. But in any case, there's the roadmap, and we hope that they will take a good look at it and give it a chance.
Would the the MILF still want to stay on the negotiating table after these elections?
That's what they have been saying, and let's not give them any reason not to.
What are your policy recommendations for all the parties in this peace process?
I think it's important to, I think for the next administration especially, to look at the implementation of the roadmap. Okay. And I think the presidentiables have all said that they are for the peace process. No? Of course, they are silent on the BBL. No? But they are for this peace process. And I think it's important to look at how, in dialogue with the MILF, how we can implement this roadmap, given the current political, constitutional regime that we have. And then really rally support behind this. You need a national constituency, to really push this this autonomy project forward. And I always say that it's good to shift to an implementation mode than to negotiation.
Yes.
Because the COB was a product of two-party negotiations, right? And now it's all, you need to talk to the different stakeholders now. No?
Yes.
So, and it's important that you need more time, to do this. And my suggestion also is, if the president can reach out now to the presidential candidates, no, I think the Mindanao peace is, is over and above all this politics and all that. No, it's above that. No, and therefore I think it's important that the president can reach out to them and explain what his ideas on this. And we all have to keep the faith and hope. No?
Professor Ferrer and Attorney Bacani, thank you so much for your precious time and helping to enlighten our audience here at Bloomberg.
Thank you,
very
Tony.
much.
Thank you, Tony.
The quest for a lasting peace in Mindanao has remained elusive for generations of Filipinos. For the past 50 years, every Philippine president has attempted to address the Muslim secessionist issue, but none has succeeded so far. In the end, we have yet to find a lasting solution, one that all, or at least most, of the stakeholders in the country's second biggest island would agree to. Until we find that formula for genuine autonomy, there will always be someone ready to pick up the gun and mount another rebellion. This is Tony Abad for Political Capital. Thank you, and we'll see you again next Wednesday.